Welcome to episode 4 of the Real Estate Update presented by Agent eLearning. I'm your co-host Sterling Fryar along with Meagan Campion. I'm excited to have you with us as we discuss a vital topic in our industry, which is political action committees. Today we have Ben Rodriguez and Asa Fleming. As always, this episode is being recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat and we will do our best to get to them. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Asa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. First, thanks so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Asa Fleming. I am the 2024 REALTOR Party Disbursements Liaison for NAR, the National Association of REALTORS. And with that, oversee a lot of the political action committees. I would say the committees that do the actual work as far as disbursements, campaign finance, campaign services, and all these different things. Also, I'm a part of the travel team. So I've been going around the country talking about RPAC, talking about the importance of it. And what it boils down in a nutshell is to, RPAC is the single best investment that you can make into your business. And so I know we'll get into it later. But again, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Purple Rain.
Yeah, Purple Rain, Purple Solution. Ben Rodriguez here, your 2023 TREPAC Chair, immediate past chair. That's finally about to come to an end, thankfully. But I also serve at the national level RPAC fundraising trustees for Region 10, which is Texas and Louisiana. We can talk more about that later. But Asa took all my good talking points. I'm just going to say, you've heard it. You see the purple chair, and we'll talk more about it. But easily said, it's not a red problem. It's not a blue problem. It's a purple solution. And hopefully talking about PACs today, we can get you energetic and involved in what realtors actually do, which is more than just open a door and fill in blanks on a piece of paper.
Meagan.
Oh, all right. So can y'all tell us, I guess, first off, I'm going to throw a couple of quick polls into our chat just to see who we have on the webinar today. Are you an agent, a broker, an appraiser, dual license? That way we can kind of feel out what everybody is. So I'm going to leave that open for a few minutes. But can you two both speak a little bit about how you got involved in the PACs to start with?
Ace, I'm going to let you go first.
All right. So, yeah, sure. I first got into the business, I had some really good mentors, and one of my real good mentors, Elizabeth Allardyce out of Durham, North Carolina, I'm here in North Carolina, said, you want to be in the business of real estate and not just selling real estate. And being in the business of real estate really involves, advocating, which is the premise of what we, do as realtors. And so I walked up to the Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors and said, I want to be involved with government affairs and, trying to help with the political action committee. And so they were like, whose campaign are you on? Who is this person? But, it took them about 3 years to realize that I wanted to just be involved. I wanted to be engaged. And so I really didn't get it at first as far as RPAC, right? But money wasn't really flowing like that. So I would give just the very minimal amount, what they would call your fair share, which at the time was like $15. And then once I got into the leadership of my local association in Raleigh, that's when it really hit me, and I got to go into the state level and see what how we were impacting change. And I decided to step up my investment and became a major investor. And one of the things that really impressed me was going up to Washington, seeing how we would approach Capitol Hill, talk with our federal senators, and also on the state level, talking to our General Assembly at the state level, and just seeing how much we were respected, how much the advocacy that we were doing was impacting regulation on the state, local, and national level, right? And so that kind of hooked me. And there's nothing like, seeing is believing. And I have something that I have called an angle that, I never really had an angle doing this. I just wanted to be engaged, but I have made an acronym out of angle, and I'll be glad to discuss that later.
Perfect. Ben, how did you get involved in PACs?
Not as nice and fairy tale as Asa's story there. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I had no great mentor, let alone a good mentor when I got into business. I got licensed. First person that called me, because now I know as a broker owner, they get your information when you pass the test. And I said, sure, because honestly, I didn't even want to sell real estate. I was just taking the classes because, like any 18-year-old kid, didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to be a real estate investor. Nobody told me you needed money to do that, although they still tell me on TV and the internet I don't need money to be an investor. But, my life stories say otherwise. So I started working for a company. I won't say any names. It was the best, worst experiment ever. I got to watch somebody run a business into the ground, and it wasn't mine. But that same person told me the board is only there to take your money. Don't pay that $35. You don't have to. I didn't even know what it was for, our TREPAC minimum fair share investment in Texas, and go sell some real estate. And until I started my own company back in 2007, and I started getting involved with the association, because like most people, you get more pissed off than you get energetic if you don't know what the process is. So I went down there, and my AE was like, you should join a committee. I learned a lot of things that I was mad about. They were there for a reason. And that's just the way our industry is for certain things. And then, a good friend of mine, and some of y'all know him, James Johnson, I call my real estate dad. He said, man, you need to get involved with TREPAC. You need to come on the TREPAC committee. You have fun, I have fun. And I really wasn't until I started serving on the state level as our PIC, Political Involvement Council member, because I had a good relationship with our field rep, Pete Craig. I think it was a good inspiration, who told me to get involved and had me out meeting our state legislators, so forth, that I really saw the power of the PAC and what we do as realtors. And I think, like Asa said, seeing is believing. I think a lot of realtors don't understand what we actually do as a PAC and the influence we have in Austin or DC. I talked to my friends in Louisiana and Baton Rouge. We all have the same problems literally in every state. It's amazing. But the solutions are all different because every state is different. I mean, Texas is different. It's a lot different in San Angelo than it is in Beaumont, Austin, Dallas. I mean, we could be 4 or 5 different states, quite frankly. So Asa talked about DC. I was wearing this shirt. I don't know if y'all seen it. That's from our Realtor Day at the Texas State Council last year. It was purple, the sea of purple. And although people think Texas is blood red, I mean, there's both parties still in the state of Texas. Both represent a lot of great Texans. And it takes, just like my state rep would say, it takes 87 members of the House to pass a bill, and there's not enough rural Republicans to make that happen. So it takes people across the aisle. And Jefferson County, pretty much, I live just on the outskirts, I'll tell you, is the most diverse political county in the state of Texas. They, reelected Greg Abbott. They reelected Trump. We have the Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan, but we also have Christian Manuel Haynes, who's a Democrat, represents the district that splits the city in half. And they're all good friends. So we'll get into that, how they're all great friends. They make it work. But us as realtors, we work with both sides of the aisle because that's what matters. It's going to take both parties to get anything done, whether it's here in Texas, North Carolina, and you think it may or may not. But as diverse as it is, they only win when we stay divided. And we all have the same goals in mind, typically 99% of the time, regardless of what you see on the national media. We all have the same goal in mind, but we have different roadmaps how to get there. And that's where we need to come together. And as realtor members, we can help guide and steer that ship and get everybody to the correct destination.
No, I love it. And I mean, both of y'all are still active real estate brokers, right?
Yes, I'm a practicing broker. Absolutely.
How long have y'all been in the business?
I've been in the business for 26 years. I come out of I started in New York and Queens. I'm an NC State grad. That's how I know about North Carolina. My father's from here. And, I got a ride with one of my CFO from the hospital that I worked at. And I told him I got into real estate in Queens. I really love this. And he was like, well, if you want to get into real estate, Phoenix, Arizona, and mind you, this is 99, Phoenix, Arizona, Washington, D.C. metro area, or Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. And so then I came down to North Carolina and said, this is what I want to do. I'm going to sell real estate. And that's what I've been doing.
Once again, not as glorious as Asa's. But I've been licensed since January 2005. That's what I said, my 20th year starts here in a couple of months. Wanted to be a real estate investor, like I said, didn't know you had to have money. Got in. I think I made $500 on my first transaction. Did it 2 years. The licensing requirements were different back then, not so much what it is now to be a broker. I tell people I'm a maybe you can beat this, I'm an ass of real estate because I have an associate's degree in real estate from Lamar in Beaumont. And after that, I decided I'm gonna get my broker's license, pass the test. I started my own company and really worked out of the back office of a mortgage company for the first 2 years. And I got a great story go along with that, how I was almost one transaction away from folding shop before I really got involved. And I made one of the best sales of one of my best friends of all time. He wasn't a friend, he was a client, just a call on a Sunday. And here I am today. So 20 years later, I can tell you the more involved and the more I've given back to this profession, the more it's given back to me in my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, Megan and I think we both got our license in 2008. I actually was taking real estate classes through Blinn because all of my friends took way more hours than I did at A&M, and they were all going to get their ring. And I figured out that if you take some real estate classes through Blinn, those hours will transfer. So I was able to get my ring. I ended up taking like 21 hours one summer just so I could get my ring with my friends. But I mean, same deal. It ended up being a really great, a smart decision because I was able to get my license even before I graduated college.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, Ben, you said something when you were talking about your story that I think a lot of us went through, where you start with that first broker and they're talking about what to do and they say, oh, just uncheck that box, right, for the donation. So I'm going to throw another poll in there of how familiar everyone is with TREPAC and RPAC. But how do we get past that and get to that point where it's not just a box you check? I call myself an accidental major investor because I can't lose an auction online. So that's how I hit my major investor goal every year, is the TREPAC auctions accidentally. But how do we get past that, uncheck that box, it's not worth anything?
Ace, I'll take this one if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I don't know if you have box to check or uncheck in North Carolina. I mean, everybody's different.
Yeah, we have.
Here I tell my agents, because I do have a lot of new agents, I tell them to check that box. Don't uncheck it, just keep it checked. And they'll ask me why. And I'll invite them to an event or at a luncheon or whatever we have. And I say, look, you really want to know why? You need to go to this. Because we're their broker. We tell them so much stuff and so much information. It's like telling your kids a life lesson. A lot of times if Sterling goes and tells my daughter something, she'll probably listen to him more than she will listen to me, just because, that's the way life is. And they got to see it to believe it, like you said. So, I mean, accidental major investor, 100%. I got into it and said, I'll be a major investor. What can I get out of it? And I mean, that's the fact for a lot of people. Like, hey, if I'm given $1,000, what do I get out of it? I mean, now I don't even look at it. I'd spend way too much. My wife has to stop me. She's a major investor. My daughter's a major investor. They just think that's what we do because they've only been around me. But they got to see their dollars at work. I mean, my slogan this year went a very intense runoff for Dave Phelan, who's the current Speaker of the House. May not be this election, we'll see. And the governor, having an opponent run against him. But, my big thing down here in Beaumont was money don't vote. They call me Bumper Sticker Ben because if it doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, people around Southeast Texas don't remember it. Take it for what you may, but money don't vote. And, there was over $10 million spent in that race. That was 25,000 votes cast and $10 million spent. And he won by 1,100 votes. And that's the power of it. Money don't vote. You can do whatever you want, and that's what the power of Realtor Day is at the Texas Capitol. I mean, we are fortunate and unfortunate, I'd say, that our legislature only meets every other year. They only get once every 2 years to screw things up for us. But that means we got to do a lot of extra work in that off season, is what I call it, the 2 days that we do in Austin, and put our legislative priorities together, because this isn't stuff that just comes up. We pull out a hat or staff pulls out a hat. Volunteer members get out there, they come up with legislative priorities. Those may change. And then, we advocate, make those calls, show up and get things done. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that are done, but it's just like our business. I mean, the internet's changed it. We're on Zoom now, or whatever this is called. Don't get me wrong. And, we can make phone calls. We can talk to clients. We can do FaceTime virtual tours like COVID and all that good stuff. But it's all about the relationship and the relationships that we have across the street from our office in Austin at the state capitol, the relationship that I have with my state rep. It's those relationships. And I'll tell the new investors, you may not have that relationship, but for $35, there's no other investment that's going to get you a seat at the table with such influential people than you will ever get for that $35 investment. And I don't care if you're a major investor, platinum investor, Hall of Fame. If you invest the minimum and show up, that makes more of a difference than anything else.
You know, that's incredible. I mean, that's excellent. I mean, I agree 100% with everything Ben's saying. You know, I always say you've got to be in it to win it, right? And you know, you have to be engaged. You know, you hear a lot of the realtors when they're first start, especially when they're first starting out, they'll say, you know, I don't have the money. You know, I'm just trying to get my business going. And you know, what is that saying? You know, don't be too broke to pay attention, right? Pay attention to what's going on in the industry. Pay attention to what our advocacy efforts are, and you won't mind, you know, keeping that box checked, because you can't go down to the General Assembly. You can't get involved at your local level or on a national level. That money is your voice. That money is our voice collectively when we go there. And you know, to be involved at the best, you know, at the best level that you can would be to do your fair share. That's why they call it your fair share. We are all in this together. We all benefit from it. And you don't want to be in the business, right? I had a lot of colleagues when I first really started getting into this heavy would say, hey, I don't have time for that. You know, I'm trying to build my business. I'm trying to do this. You take care of that. Well, you know, why would you want to benefit from something that you haven't contributed to, or you haven't even gotten engaged and found out what it's doing? But you are benefiting, and that's a fact. And so I always tell them, keep that box checked. That's your investment. That's your in. And as long as you're in, and we are all in together, we will win.
So Asa, I actually heard that this week. You know, I'm the president of the National Association of REALTORS.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I heard that in a meeting. Well, I mean, y'all throw these events and you do this and you do that. I don't have time for that. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we had a big problem here, and, you know, we had the COVID, we were deemed essential. And, you know, I feel like we ran with that far too long as far as TREPAC, you know, and then, you know, I just feel like sometimes the message that we're sending out is misses the mark. Now we have not a red, not a blue, but a purple that really worked, and it rejuvenated some participation in my mind. But here locally, we had, I'd say over 5 to 7 years ago, I mean, we had little participation. And so what are we, you know, what are y'all saying instead of I'm sorry guys, but the cliche, check the box, don't check the box, all this stuff, you know, a real world message. What are you telling people?
I hear you with the COVID thing. We were on the COVID explanation that we were essential for a while. And I still say it going around the country sometimes, because it is important. We were not able to work. I mean, I'll give you an example here in North Carolina. We had 26,000 transactions in the pipeline when they stopped everything.
Wow.
Okay? Now, if you think about it, and I've explained this here in the state locally, think about that. That's 52,000 sides. And if we were not deemed essential, we had 52,000 sides, right? That would have been in limbo, living out of their truck, family, not being able to sell where they were to move into the house they were in. They were just going to be stuck. And so that's important when you get to see that we were able to continue business as usual, right? And that's all due to the efforts of RPAC, RPAC's investment in our community through our candidates, our issues, all these different things allowed them to say, we hear the realtors. The realtors have been incredibly supportive of us along the way. We didn't have to build a relationship. You know, we had already established and built a relationship before we actually needed it. And so when you look at it like that, everybody was making really good money during COVID. I know for me, I thought COVID was going to really destroy my business. I actually had one of the best years I've had in my 26 years during COVID. And that directly was an effect of investing in RPAC, creating the relationships before we needed it. So when we actually came to the point where we actually needed it, we were able to benefit. Now, you know, you're saying you don't want it, and I'm talking to someone who just didn't want to be involved and they don't get it, right? I'll say you didn't want to do this, but you benefited. I mean, you were actually able to do this, and you're now saying, yeah, I don't want to be involved with that. You know, that to me is, you know, disingenuous. I think it's very important for all of us to see the part that we play in and to make sure that we are not benefiting from something that we did not contribute to.
No, I love that. And I love the, you know, kind of the message of we it wasn't just us. It wasn't realtors. It wasn't just realtors. It was protecting our consumers, the buyers and the sellers. I love that.
All right, I know.
Yeah, I mean, and with the number of sides you're talking about there, Asa, also you have all the indirect, like we call it the upstream, downstream of the gas industry, oil and gas. You have how many contractors out there that wouldn't have the work, the roofs, the plumbing, those type things, construction, also own a construction company as well. And, just the things that we saw, what helped economically. Now, how all that plays out in the next couple of years in inflation stuff, that's for another thing. But we were deemed essential, like you said, because of the relationships that we had already built. I always hear, I used to have an insurance license as well. Nobody thinks about life insurance until there's a death. And typically it's too late at that point in time. And that's why a lot of people get into it, because they've had a bad experience. I hate to say that and use those, but those are real world examples. You don't think about it till you need it. That's just the way of life. And I think, like Sterling said, we beat that COVID drum really hard in Texas. I think Texas, being a big state, and the PAC and the culture that we've built over the years kind of puts us on a pedestal where people are like, okay, you got to bring me something new. Like I said, the legislature only meets every 2 years. So you can't have a win every year if there's nothing happening. And I say that because that's what people think. But TREPAC and what the PAC does is so much more than just the state legislature, the House, the Senate, even RPAC on the national level. But what happens locally? I can talk about my local association. When I really got involved as a PIC member, we had a GA committee, but it never met. And if you looked at our PAC numbers, our investments were peaked about 2008, believe it or not, during the housing crisis. It fell off probably about 50% of those levels in 2013. But it also, you could tell it coincided with our GA committee and the work that they had done, the governmental affairs side. I always say the PIC and the PAC, if you're from Texas, that's the yin to my yang. Because if you don't have what the PIC does, there's no point of what the PAC does. And they're the grassroots side. They're everything dealing with the legislature other than raising the money. They're giving the recommendations, what candidates we should give the money to, what priorities, and so forth. So if you look at our 2023 wins, in the last legislative session, the homestead increased to $100,000, $110,000 if you're a veteran. The water fund, the broadband, rural broadband. I get better broadband at my home in the country outside the city limits than I do at this office I'm sitting in right now. I don't even know how that's possible. And it's also $20 a month cheaper. Those are the things that we do. There are places in rural America where I'd say there's no way they have internet. And of course I check and they have high-speed internet better, like I said, better than this office. The right to farm. There's just so many things that come up that are just, it's ridiculous that you hear about it and we have to fight for it, but it's because members that report these things. Forms of payments, the real estate commission, thank God, getting away from those double payments that we were paying them for all of us brokers and owners out there. And the list goes on and on. Last time was HOA reform. HOA reform is going to be a big thing this coming go around. If you deal with HOAs, they just, it's like appraisal district reform. They just changed the name of the fee and they increased it, multiplied it times 5 or whatever. It's those things that happen at the local level, circling back to the GA committee. If the agents, the realtor members don't see that buy-in at the local level, don't see the action happen at the local level, don't see you showing up at city council meetings at the local level, they're not going to invest in the PAC, because if they assume the PAC only deals with state and national issues, what's in it for them? So I made an initiative when I was board president that the GA committee was going to meet. We're going to have members at the city council meetings, especially Beaumont or the large cities, and they can bring back that information to the committee and see things that we need to get involved in, campaigns we needed to get involved in, things we needed to spread the word on. And they could see what we're doing, because there's a lot of initiatives that you can ask for money from your state association to fight. That's not necessarily TREPAC, but those things that they see, and people can see the results in their own backyard. And that's what I think the problem is. It's that in it for me mentality, and I'm in it to win it. But if, like you said, if you're not engaged and you're not in it to win it, if you don't have a seat at the table, we always say, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And that's the bottom line, because the losers are the ones that don't show up. I'm all for, if you show up, listen, voice your opinion. I don't care who you vote for, just get out and vote. That's my plug for this next election. I don't care. It's going to do a lot more than $35 if you show up and vote. However, it goes a lot further for the PAC in your profession if you give that $35, because let's be real, it's not just all for private property rights for homeowners. It protects our business. Buddy, you insure your car, you insure your house. Why don't you insure your business? And $35, that's the cheapest insurance that I got. I can tell you that right now.
So let's talk about maybe some specific initiatives that RPAC, TREPAC, has worked on and won. You spoke about a few of those, Ben. But also, what we're looking at going ahead. I'm going to throw a poll in there about what the most important role of PACs in the real estate industry, what our viewers think they are. But what are the PACs currently focusing on to help our industry and our consumers?
Asa, you want to go first this time?
I mean, yeah. So at the national level, there's a myriad of things. Fair housing, regulation, flood insurance, just making sure we have the adequate flood protection that we need. One of the things that we do at the national level is really work collaboratively with the state and locals, right? So you have your trustees at your state level that actually we pick regionally to sit at the national level. All of the local, that's how we can work. So, some people you say, well, do we need a national PAC? We can all this stuff is really local. Well, you do, because you need to be working in concert, right, to affect the change. And so let's just say something happened in Florida, the hurricane, whatever, and these people are, having an issue. Now they're past that. They can't get flood insurance, just to use that as an example. That's just not something that's in Florida. And you have North Carolina. I mean, years ago, you had Sandy go all the way up the East Coast. You had, go all the way to New Orleans on the South and the Gulf. So these are real issues that affect regionally, right? But then you may have another issue in another region, right? That is like property taxes, like transfer taxes, right? That we don't want, right? And so everybody gets together at the table and they voice what issue or whose candidacy they're going to support that's going to work toward. And what a lot of people don't realize, there are 9 things that we look at. There's a criteria of 9 at the disbursements level to see what we're going to actually support, right? And none of those things really have to do with, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, right? They're all issues that would affect our business, our clients, our community, and our industry, right? That's what we do. And so, yeah, I would use flood insurance, taxes, property taxes, fair housing. These are issues that we directly impact and make sure that we keep it to a point where it's palatable for our industry, for our clients, and of course, our community.
Awesome.
Mustache Man?
Mustache Ben. And you can only say that for another 2 weeks. I'm just sure when it's gone. My wife will be grateful, I can tell you that much. About like mustaches, Texas is fortunate to be one of only, I think, 11 states has a ban on transfer fees. Ace, I don't know about North Carolina if they're on that list or not. I know there's 38 others, and that's why I let you go first. I had to Google it. I couldn't remember the numbers. I didn't want anybody to say Ben was wrong, but there's 38 states that charge transfer fees on top of commissions, closing costs, whatever it may be. They charge the buyer a fee to purchase that. That's how the state makes money. I mean, the state of Texas makes money every time you get a title policy. Was it $3? I think they get a whopping $3. $2. Yeah, it was reduced. It was $3. Now it's $2. See, glad Megan's on here to correct me. They get $2 for every transaction. Honestly, that's probably still a nice chunk of money for the state of Texas. Just that $2 fee there. So, I mean, that's something we talk about all the time. It's been done for years, and it's kind of like being essential. It can be like beating a dead horse, but when you look at the numbers, especially in a down market, of how much more money your clients would have to bring to the table, we're talking about killing another 50% of the deals that are already being killed around the state of Texas due to the financial situation and supply and demand. So HOA reform is big for me. I'm one of those people. I have 3 rules when I buy real estate. Location is key. I don't buy anything with a flat roof, and I don't do HOAs. So I don't jack with condos, townhomes, all that, because if you actually look at their books, 9 out of 10 are financially insolvent, and they would be like Enron and forced into bankruptcy. But unfortunately, most people don't know and don't read the fine print. So I live in an area where there's hurricanes. We talked about them. Hurricane Harvey decimated Texas, a couple of years ago, flooded all of Southeast Texas, Houston, and so forth. That right there will set you back where, the HOA is calling and says that you owe $5,000 because we need to pay for this roof and so forth. These are the things that we want transparency to bring to the consumer so they understand not only what these fees are, and some of them are charging these outrageous fees, but it's the management company. None of that goes into the pot to support their property and do anything. So they're working on that transparency there. The homestead exemption is great. I think there could have been some different things done there, which our GA team was in full fight for that bill and what was passed. I know it wasn't exactly what Texas Realtors and the PAC wanted, but we got a lot of the things accomplished. A lot of things will be there. There's some things in there for commercial industrial stuff, which I'll be honest with you, our speaker's family is large commercial industrial investors. So I'm sure they had some sway in it, but those things do matter also to the commercial world, because let's be real. If all private homeowners are paying less taxes, somebody's got to pay the difference, right? If we're paying less to go into the schools, they're only cutting such a big check from the state level. Somebody's got to make up the difference. And business, we all know that small business owners ourselves, we can't make up that difference. So that's where it comes into play. What's going on, and our GA staff does a great thing. Like I said, that's separate from the PAC, but we all work together, part of that four-legged stool at Texas Realtors. They have a great influence, the GA staff does in Austin, on what goes in those bills because of the relationships they have. It's surprising the wording of a sentence and or but makes such a huge difference when it comes to legislature laws and lawmaking. So they have a great relationship over there. They're highly respected, and that gets the thing done. But I think going forward, taxes, insurance, affordability, all wraps into that affordability piece. I think that's going to be a big thing that people are talking about, because regardless of the price of homes going up or down, I don't care if it's 10%. My insurance is going up more than 10%. My groceries are going up more than 10%. Everything else has gone up way more than 10%. So with inflation, how are people going to afford to not only purchase a home, but afford to stay in the homes that they have? You know, they always say there was a great billboard I know, is a funeral home that put it up. There's only two things in life that are guaranteed: death and taxes. We can only help you with one. Call us. And that's like great marketing 101 there, genius. But how do we do that? And I think realtors are going to be on the forefront of that, because we see it every day. We deal with everybody from every race, color, religion, creed, you name it, whatever's named in the code of ethics, we deal with it. But when it comes to finances, everybody has the same problem. The dollar only buys so much. So getting that perspective and bringing that to the table, because I always tell people all the time, most people, their perspective is their reality, yet their reality is not their perspective. And the only way you can change somebody's mind is if you change their perspective. What say you, Sterling?
Philosophizer.
I know. Deep thoughts from Ben Rodriguez this morning. It's too early.
10:30 and no. Okay, so let's talk about insurance. 2 years ago when Marcus was still chair, and I can't remember which conference we were at, and I brought it up. I said, guys, what are we doing with insurance? My insurance last year went up 30%. Mm-hmm. My insurance provider, or my insurance broker or whatever, he quoted out 30 different providers. Only 2 came back and said that they would insure my house. And, and it was 30% higher. I mean, when we're talking about housing affordability and things, how do we, across the aisle, work with the insurance industry to fix this is a massive problem.
Well, I personally feel it's a conversation. Here in North Carolina, we are really going through a lot of insurance reform over the last few years. And, what the insurance companies were doing here was the whole consent to rate thing. You get that consent to rate letter. And we were trying to, have conversations with our insurance commissioner, trying to affect the change from the legislature, from the General Assembly, and say, hey, we've got to do something about this. They weren't as, forthcoming, right? That conversation is a little hard to have and to get them to the table to discuss. You had both sides of the aisle. They had their own ideas on what was important. A lot of the insurance companies, because we wouldn't allow certain things, withdrew from our state, and so that's another issue that we have to try to sort of guard against, right? We want to have the conversation. We want to make it where it's fair and equitable to the homeowners, right? But we don't want to be so, standing in cement, right, where they go, okay, you know what, we're out of your state, right? Now that's a bigger problem, and then everybody's going to this statewide pool to insure their homes, which that isn't, that's an actuarial nightmare, right? And so I think it's just trying to have the conversation. I think, supporting our state senators, our state representatives, getting in there, lobbying them, talking with them and saying, hey, here's what we would like to see in insurance, and then getting that audience with the insurance commissioner, right? And telling them, hey, we have to make sure we address this as far as affordability, as far as coverage, and try to just see if we can move the needle the best way that we can. But, to really tell you the truth, they hold a lot of the cards.
Yeah, no, one of my best friends was a partner in a large insurance company. And, every time it hails, he, gets all worried and everything. But, my whole thing with talking about over the last 18 months was, our insurance goes up because of natural disasters. I said, hypothetically, in a perfect world, if we have no natural disasters, will my insurance policy go down? Absolutely not. It ain't happening. And, it's like, how do we do this? And Ben, are you seeing anything on a state level? Because I know we're having a lot of issues with providers pulling out.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of glad you went into the insurance side of things, because my ADHD brain clock started going because somebody called just like they are now. And I want to look at my cell phone over here. So, that's the realtor in me. But, we had a big win yesterday. If you were on social media, if you're, you wouldn't know because you're not part of one of the inland coastal counties that are part of TWIA, where nobody writes wind insurance. It's done by TWIA, Texas Windstorm Association, which is a state-run organization. So that covers wind, aka hurricanes, so forth, hail, and that's for your coastal counties. So we have a joke that the wind doesn't stop at the bayou here in Southeast Texas, because I live outside of that. Jefferson County touches the coast. I live in Hardin County right outside of it. Trust me, Hurricane Rita didn't stop and slow down any right there at that river. Harvey, Umberto, all the different storms we've had in my lifetime, it doesn't stop. There's no difference. But if you're a coastal county, the farmers, the state farms, all these other companies, I'm just using those names and not bad-mouthing anybody. They don't write wind in those counties. It's covered by the state. So they were going for a 10% rate increase, along with everybody else. Luckily, the insurance board, the TWIA board, listened to everybody. There were a lot of things. Senator Hughes down there in Corpus Christi is a huge advocate for it. He's a great champion of the realtors. He was actually his big push, Mays Middleton down in Chambers County, close to here. Those relationships helped kill that rate increase. So I think it's going to happen sooner or later. Of course it is. Everybody else's rates are going up. But we also always joke about how one hurricane is X number of dollars worth of damage and insurance claims. But Sterling brought up hail. And if you look at the statistics, hail damage just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on an annual basis is larger than any hurricane that we've had or named storm in the last 20 years. So why is it just coastal counties that's subject to this TWIA and windstorm surcharge? And I say surcharge because their rates are already higher than the private market. Plus, if your roof they have all these different requirements. And if your roof doesn't fit that, if you don't change your windows and get a certificate, if you change your front door and don't get a certificate, and they know that you did it, they just went by and changed doors and they took pictures just from their database history there, you're going to pay a surcharge. There's all, it's government. And when I was in Louisiana for their Realtor Day this past year in Baton Rouge, it was funny because their main concern is insurance. They have Citizens, which is the state-owned insurance company. And there are parishes, counties, for all y'all that aren't familiar with the French, they have parishes around New Orleans that nobody will write insurance in, that there are homes without insurance, none, zero. And the lenders are choosing not even to reinsure and go through Citizens because it's too expensive. So there's people out there paying notes on homes that don't have insurance of any kind on them whatsoever.
So I actually had that conversation with my lender and said, hey, at a certain point, if this gets so unaffordable, what's going to stop me from just not having insurance? But would I be in default of my loan requirements of maintaining insurance? And she talked about how banks could, and I can't remember the exact term that she used, but it was basically the bank can force insurance and they can get better rates. Yep. And I said, well, what's going to stop me from saying, I don't want to pay that? Go ahead and force insurance. If you're getting a better rate, hey, I'm down. Let's go.
So, I did a lot of REO work in 07, 08, still do a little bit of that. And yeah, because they get a blanket like commercial policy. It's all inclusive. It's all one for all their property. So it is. It's better coverage than what me and you can get over the counter, so to speak, and for a lower rate. I mean, insurance is a thing. I mean, I tell people all the time. They say, "Oh, man, you've been a realtor for 20 years. You're rich. You're wealthy." I said, "Man, if I had 20 years in the insurance industry, I had a lot more mailbox money coming. Trust me." But
right.
At the same time, for those insurance agents that have been doing it, they'll tell you, and they're friends of mine, the game has changed so much for them. It's hard for them to stomach answering the phone because they have no control over that renewal rate. They have no control, and it's hard for them to have that conversation with their friends and coworkers. And I was talking to one the other day that comes in and talks, and they're like, I had to make this move because I just couldn't sell anymore with a straight face. I couldn't do it. It just wasn't the right thing to do. And it's going to, affect my income. But at the end of the day, I see these people at Walmart, the grocery store, Friday night football games. I got to have those conversations and be realistic. And I think I hate to say that's becoming the new normal, but it truly is. People don't understand the insurance industry is so large. When the financial sector sees a hit, they see a hit. And I hate to say who's going to bear the burden of that hit. We are as consumers, and we all have to have insurance. I mean, I think me personally in Texas, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but hey, we as realtors help save people a lot of money on their property taxes every year with that $100,000 homestead exemption. That saves people a couple $100 a month. You don't think the insurance company reads the paper and Facebook too? They're like, hey, they save $300. We can charge them an extra $100 a month. They're still gonna have a cheaper note. Most of them won't notice, and that's the reality of it. So my bigger concern is the rates are going up, but the coverage is going down.
That's right.
That's just like anything. You got to read the fine print. And I brought up the old TWIA thing because TWIA and I call it redlining, because when you're redline counties that have to have something and don't have it, if you look along the coast, all of the areas that are rural areas, bedroom communities outside of those major counties on the coastal counties have seen explosive growth in the last 20 years. Why? Because you build on the other side of the bayou, and I can spend $50,000 to $75,000 more on a house and have the same note or a cheaper note. So that is what affects housing affordability. Is this overregulated, overtaxed, the cost to live in these areas whenever a hailstorm in San Angelo or Dallas-Fort Worth causes more damage, but because the right people in the right place at the right time lobbied and got this passed. So there's good lobbying, there's good legislation, there's bad lobbying and bad legislation. I just want to say the PAC's here to do the good work, and we can do that for $35 from everybody.
Good, awesome segue into back
to on tangent about insurance. I got to take it.
No, and okay, so last year, especially in Tom Green County, we TRIP, right? Issues Mob was what it used to be, and we reached out and said, "Hey, we have a major property tax problem. Our appraisal district is, out of their minds." And we appealed to TRIP, and we ended up getting a whole I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but we got a lot of help to help the people in Tom Green County protest their property taxes. So it's not just the PAC, like you said. You have TRIP, you have the four legs of the stool. Tell me what those are again, please.
I will defer. Hold on, let me Google that. It's public policy issues mode, which is now TRIP, PIC, and PAC. See, I know all four of them. And we all work together. I mean, you cut a leg off a stool, it's going to be hard to sit still, So,
Asa, do we have something like that on the national level?
Oh yeah, property taxes are one of the things we focus on the most, and we've really been impactful at the federal level to make sure that we're not getting in the way of what the states want to do, right? But we try to make sure that they understand that property taxes and appraisal have to work in hand. We've really started to really look at appraisals, not only just for the fair housing aspect, but just to make sure that, the local governments weren't overreaching, trying to build revenue for their respective areas and putting it on the backs of homeowners. They'll say, well, we didn't raise the rate, right? But you inflated the appraisal, and so we'd say, okay, and here in North Carolina, we've done the exact same thing. We've helped homeowners, contest their tax rate increase, their value increases. And just to combat that notion of we didn't raise the rate, which they were putting across the counties, across the state, and they do it across the country, right? And homestead exemptions are absolutely excellent. Florida, these things really work. And one of the reasons why a lot of the other states don't go that route is because it's the revenue. They're after the revenue. They need the revenue, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure that they have what they claim is enough revenue to run their municipalities and their county governments.
I like to use the word revenue because it really ticks me off when I hear county officials, city officials use, we had an increase in revenue this year, so we're going to do this. We've had an increase in revenue, so we're going to do this pet peeve project. Increase in revenue, people, means they raised more in taxes. And how do you do that? Like you said, if you don't increase the rate. We have a county judge around here. He's still the county judge. I'm friends with him, but he would always say that, and I'd always tell him all the time. He'd be like, we haven't raised the rate in 10 years. I'm like, would you quit saying that? Because you think we're stupid? It went down in 10 years. Quit. Finally quit saying it because he realized people are smarter than that. They actually did cut the rate this year, but we had such a massive growth in a multi-billion-dollar plant that went in that, some things had to change there with the new laws that they can only increase so much, or there's an automatic recall. So we have put some things in place in Texas with the PAC and so forth working there. If it increases by so much, they do have to reduce that rate. That is due to the PAC, honestly, in the sway that we have in Austin, but still 3% on $3 billion, do the math. That's a lot of money. They still have room to increase. We just put a cap on it. And I know caps are dirty words, but I do want to go back to the appraisal districts because that's what we're talking about. Asa, is North Carolina a non-disclosure state?
No, we're a disclosure state.
So let me ask you, on a state that full disclosure, I guess you'd say.
Sure.
Is that what the appraisal district bases their evaluation off of?
No, they have to do their own independent appraisal, right? Okay. And one of the things that, we always say you have market rate, right? So you have market value, then you have tax value, right? And one of the things we try to do is keep our tax values in line. So we were doing it every 8 years, right? Our revals. Mm-hmm. So our revals we're doing every 8 years. We've now truncated that to 4. Right. So we're trying to make sure that we're how much can it change in 4 years? Well, it can, but definitely not as much as it would in 8. Right. So we're trying to match that. And the closer you are to the reval that you've had your appraisal, it should sort of mirror it. The further you get to the 4 years, you're going to have a little bit of a distinction, but it can't be but so much. And that's how we try to keep that in check with the local governments.
That's crazy. Texas is every 3 years. I know my county assesses mine every year because, they just know I'm a thorn in their side and I'm going to be a thorn right back. You can see me there during protest time. That's not a problem. But so Texas every 3 years. That's crazy. 8 years, that had to be stupid.
That was nuts, right? Exactly.
A house on year 7, I'm moving.
And RPAC was important. RPAC was very important with that at the national and state level to say, hey, this is just, you had some houses that were being appraised on market value, right? But I'll just give an example. Say it could be $700,000-$800,000 market value, and they're paying taxes on a value that was like $500,000. You know what I'm saying? So you go, well, that's a good thing, right? But when they started saying, well, okay, that's really out of whack. And now after that 8th year, you're going from 500 to 8. That's a huge increase, right? And it had an effect on homeowners. And so they're trying to kind of manage that a little bit better.
Yeah, in Texas, we had a couple years ago, if y'all remember Sterling Megan, we had the hidden property tax push. That was our big campaign to explain this to consumers. You had hiddenpropertytax.org. It's probably still there. You can go and explain to the consumer of how they can say your taxes we haven't raised your taxes, but yet your taxes continue to go up. Right. And they explained that whole process. And I think that really helped. Me personally, I tell everybody to protest. Texas, I don't know, y'all had said every 8 years. I know here, every time the property changes hands, if you refinance sucker, it gives them the ability to reassess. Right. Funny story. I was actually at my house the other day and somebody came out from the county and I was talking to the neighbor and I was telling him this story about my dad. One time was in the kitchen and he looked out back and there was a young lady by his chicken coop back by the back property line. This was after Hurricane Rita. So I only know this because the chicken coop had flipped over. There was one that was mobile, but it was pretty big. And so he runs out there with a shotgun. We live in the country. That's just what you do. And he asked this lady, "What are you doing?" And that's the nice way. I'm synopsizing this, cliff notes. And she goes, "Oh, well, I'm measuring this building. I'm with the appraisal district." And he says, "You're measuring this building. It's a chicken coop A and it's B. It's upside down." She couldn't even tell that. And she goes, "Yeah, but it's over 10 by 10. We have to put it on the appraisal district rolls." And he's like, "I'm not paying taxes on this." And she goes, "Well, yeah, you're going to have to." He goes, "No, I'm not. Hold on one second. It's at the back property line. Behind us, the landlocked timber company tracks, like 50 acres. So he goes and gets a tractor and he pushes it into the woods. And she goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, it's not on my property anymore. You can't tax it on me." She goes, "Well, you can't do that. You're dumping it on your neighbor." She goes, "Timber company owns it. If you can get a hold of them, tell them to call me. We'll work something out." I'm not going to say the sheriff's department did or did not come out, but my dad's born and raised, lived here till the day he died, 78 years, and they said, "You just pulled into the wrong driveway on the wrong road, man." I'd say that's the kind of things that have to happen for change to happen. But literally, when you're out there measuring a chicken coop, we're looking for money in all the wrong places. Yeah. There's not enough tax revenue to pay her salary, let alone the insurance on that car that she's driving around. So those are the stories that we have to have. We had from hidden property tax. We have, and I'll give another plug for Texas. Know Your HOA, I think, is the website there. You can go to and submit your HOA problems and nightmares that you've had. Because there's a lot of things, even with the legislation that passed 2 years ago, there's a lot of things that are due and they're still illegal. Most of them don't even know it's illegal because they're managed by somebody who can just run an Excel spreadsheet. And those are the things we don't need to, have going on. But I think there needs to be more transparency on taxes. You have all these mud districts. Texas, we love to create a mud district. Then you have the specific mud districts, the PID districts. Thank God we don't have PIDs in my neck of the woods. I'm sure they will sooner than later. But I mean, everybody charges taxes for something. If I could figure out how just to tax people, I could quit doing this for a living. Just, charge the purple solution tax. Buy me an island somewhere in the Bahamas. But taxes are going to be here forever. Death and taxes, like I said, we're going to talk about to the end of time. I think HOAs and I think regular insurance is going to be our biggest things because housing affordability, people can't afford to buy a home. None of us on this webinar right now is going to have a job.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are down to about 7 minutes, which I know is crazy considering this was a whole hour. So what I want to know is, as realtors, how can we get this information out there, not only to other realtors, but to the general public to show them, the power of PACs and why they're so important and why we need to make sure to make at minimum our minimum, fair investment, but consider doing more than that?
So I think this is where I'll bring in my angle. I love the fact that, let's look at it, ANGLE, right? The A is advocacy, because, what we do at the very core level in this business is advocate for our clients, our community, and our industry, right? So advocacy is at the core of what, the PAC does. This is what we do. Networking is how you get out there with the public, right? You're out there. If you don't network in this business, then that's failure in the business, right? Because you need to network with your community, like-minded people who are trying to become homeowners, homeowners that are already existing, that are trying to sell, level up. And you want to let them know, what you are doing in the community and how you're helping them and how we're the only entity that actually advocates for homeownership and for homeowners. The G is given generously. I know we talked about fair share, right? But, when you give at the highest level, I became a Platinum R investor. When I gave at the Platinum level, I knew that I was giving the fair share at $15 for 800 people who had no clue of how we were helping them, how they were benefiting. But that was taking a leadership role. And as I would meet people who weren't investors, right, I would let them know, hey, I invested, $12,000 last year. I'm only asking you to pay your fair share. It's very difficult for them to say no, right? So I say the G is giving generously. The L is leadership. When you take a leadership role, you're out there in the public, you're advocating, you're communicating, you're forming relationship, enduring relationships, right? and people are watching you. They understand, what you're doing. And what I always tell people is say, hey, you may advocate for a certain candidate or an issue, whatever, but let's look at the candidates. You're not down there every day looking at how they vote. And even if someone aligns with you on your issue, you may, if you watch them every day, right, you may go, man, I'm not aligned with this person on that issue, but I've supported this guy. So what I say is that our actual lobbying team, we actually have staff that goes down, they monitor it. They hold people accountable. They say, hey, this is what we feel helps our industry, helps our community. And you had agreed to sort of be supportive of this, and you weren't. You voted no against it. We hold them accountable, right? And so that's leadership. Then the final thing with the E, right, is the engagement. I advocate getting engaged. I push for it. I say get engaged. There's no way you can impact change unless you're engaged. You could say, Asa, you do it for me. Imagine if there were, we have 1.5 million members at NAR. Imagine if there were 1.5 million ASAs. How monotonous and boring and unproductive and counterproductive that would be. So we need the diversity. We need the people that have different ideas brought to the table. We need the engagement of all of us. And the more that we have, the more that we can win, the more that our community wins, etc.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Awesome. I was trying to think of a quick acronym, but I just couldn't do it that fast. But
well, let's get into purple solution.
You can't win everything, dang it. All right. Call me Mr. PS. So, it all goes back, my slogan, my years PAC chair was it's a purple solution. It's not a red problem. It's not a blue problem. It's a purple solution. For all y'all that don't know that ain't from Texas, you put red and blue together, it makes purple. Learn that kindergarten, when they made you glue pinto beans to paper during that same time period in life. So, I just like to say, like Asa tells people what he's doing, what he's giving back to the consumer. And that's what I tell my clients. That's one thing that I helped not only, promote my business and what I do and why I'm gone. I don't have clients question when I go to Austin, DC for these different meetings because they know I'm there working on their behalf. It's also helped my competitors, my fellow realtor members in my market, up theirs. That was also a big push. Up yours was the final push for my year as well. And as up your investment, but it helped them because they knew I was showing up at that listing presentation. I was going to show them I was a Hall of Fame member, show them how much money I've invested, but also show them all the conferences, all the realtor days, all the advocacy weeks, everything I've been to, because it's showing what I do for them. You're not just paying me X number of dollars, a percentage of the sale. It's not just going to me, my house, my family, but I'm giving it back. And yes, we all do that in different community service organizations, whether it's your church or schools, whatever it may be that you do to give back. That's a way to give back that's going to be long lasting, that I say it's going to leave a mark. Because those legislative, those laws and things that happen and regulation, that shapes our future more than we realize it, whether we want to believe it or not. I always say the beep in Austin and DC, control your life whether you want to believe it or not. And that's true in every state. So I always use that. And I always plug it in my presentation because, like Asa said, the diversity is what gets us through it. If you have friends or you have somebody, hey, you say I believe in them, everything they say 100%. Well, somebody's lying. When I was board president, I'd come in our board of directors meeting. I was like, look, here's our agenda. This is how many votes we have. If we all agree on everything, somebody's lying and it's not me. And there should be a tie because there's 13 directors. So I don't get a vote. This is all in your hands. Because that's the way it works as the captain, the leader. You help steer the ship. You're not the one steering it. So it's your vision, the groundwork that you lay out in front of everybody. So I give just because I know there's smarter people in the room that have better relationships than I do. Ace is the same way. We do. We have those doors that we can open and close. But at the end of the day, I give money so somebody else does it just like the person that gives $35. And that's all I'm asking for. So to circle back to what I said about our GA committee in Beaumont, and it hadn't been active when we went to the lowest levels we've had in 20 years in the PAC. We started doing candidate interviews. We started getting involved in school board races, city council races. We had more applications last year than we had ever before, and endorsed more candidates than we ever had and supported with PAC dollars. And we also raised the most money we ever had. An association of less than 700 members, we raised $90,000. That's what I mean by people want to see it in their backyard. It starts at the local level. And if you don't have that in your association, call myself, call Sterling, Megan, Asa, one of us, I'd be glad to help get that going. Because it just takes one person. Because trust me, my association was an association in name only. people showed up to fit those core standards and say that they checked the box. Different box than what we're talking about. And so we as realtors, to continue and evolve the brand that we have, we need to let people know that we do more than open doors. We do more than do funny TikTok videos, Instagram reels, all that good stuff. We can do it. And honestly, we do more than just wear purple. We do it because we show up and we're part of a profession that cares and that we do more than open doors. So thanks for inviting me again. I'll shut up now.
No, you're good. You're good. Guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And a lot of good information. If you have any questions or anything, reach out to Ben, Asa, Megan, and me. You know, we're here to answer anything. And guys, thank you again. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you so much.